So I'm in Massachusetts in this little town in the woods. I didn't know what to expect. I was like, is a crew coming? Like, what's going on? A guy in a van pulls up.
Oh, yeah. You had to talk directly to the camera, did you?
He's like, Harold, I'm going to mic you up. I don't know what's going on. No instructions. He's like, I jump in the back of a van right after school. So I'm at school talking to the music teacher. I'm like, dude, they want me to go on Piers Morgan. Like, do you think I'll get in trouble if I do this? And he's like, you got to do it. And I was like, I got to do it.
Right.
And I said the same thing I said to you. And he said, just don't, it's better to ask for forgiveness than for permission. Mm-hmm. Because I knew that if I were to ask for permission and they were to say no, I'd be in a predicament now.
Right.
So I'm not going to turn that down because I know what that feeling would be. But
well, it's also not the least bit obvious that you're required to ask for permission. Besides that, this is something that everybody who's watching and listening should understand. The answer to, if you go to an authority, especially a bureaucratic authority, and you ask for permission, why wouldn't they say no? All there is in it for them is risk and perhaps jealousy and fear. So of course they're going to say no. Why wouldn't they say no? And so then you think, well, how do you deal with that? The answer is, well, you're a free agent. What's the indication that you're required to ask for permission? In fact, if it's not illegal, or if you're not violating your, an explicit, and really, I mean explicit contract, it's like, don't ask. It's hard enough to convince yourself that you should do it, much less convince someone else who's also not going to benefit from it in the least. The other thing to understand too is that entrepreneurial motivation is relatively rare. It's only about 1 person in 50 who wants to start their own business. I really learned this when I started selling to corporations and dealing with middle management people. The fundamental motivation of 95% of people in middle management is never to do anything that makes them get noticed for any reason, good or bad. They want to do their job. They want to do it in complete and utter invisibility. And if an entrepreneurial opportunity comes along, they say, that's risky, no. And you might say, yeah, well, there's an immense potential payoff. Rather low probability, immense potential payoff. That's the entrepreneurial game. And their attitude is, I don't want to be the marked zebra that the lions cut out of the herd. You know that story? Yeah. You know the zebra story. I'll just tell it for people who might not have heard it. So zebras in principle are camouflaged, but it's kind of a weird idea because they live on the veldt and they're black and white striped and you can seriously see a zebra. So the question is, what's the camouflage? And the answer seems to be that it's against the herd camouflage because there's no single zebras, there's herds of zebras. And so when the zebras are milling about together in a herd, because the black and white stripes are edges, if you look away and then you look again, you can't tell what zebra you were looking at. Now, the reason that's relevant is because lions can't organize themselves to hunt a zebra unless they can identify one. Okay, so you don't want to be an identifiable zebra. So biologists discovered this because they were studying zebras and trying to figure out how to watch a given zebra so they could figure out what it was up to, but they'd lose track. So they would either clip their ears with a plastic clip or put a dab of paint on their haunches. And as soon as they did that, the lions killed them. The lions could mark out the zebra and organize their hunt, and then that was a dead zebra. And, you hear that in the natural world that lions often cull the herd and they take the weak and the unfit. It's like, no, they take the identifiable zebra. And the instinct of many, many people is do not be the identifiable prey animal. Right. And so if you're going to ask for permission, even permission from yourself in an odd way, the default answer is clearly no. And obviously so. And so you're going to have to step outside the herd. Now, the question with human beings is there advantages in stepping outside the herd? And the advantage is, well, you get noticed. And that's not so good if there are predators around, but it's also the pathway to extreme success, which has massive potential payoffs. Now, I'm not saying that everybody should pursue that or that everybody should want it, but that's the landscape of risk. So you decided you'd already learned enough in your life to know that you don't casually throw away spectacular opportunities. Yeah, right.
The pain of regret is a unique form of pain.
Yes. Yeah, well, it's a kind of self-betrayal, right? Because you had the chance. You had the opportunity.
Yes, that's what
the door
it was.
opened.
That's what I was trying to put my finger on earlier. And I had no one to blame but myself on how
that's seriously
turned
annoying.
out. And that's what eats you.
Yeah, right. Definitely. Definitely. Well, it's bad enough when someone else gets in your way. But when you get in your way, it's like, well, how do you?
It's far worse.
Definitely. Definitely. You know, it's also useful to know too that I think this is extremely useful is that you have to deeply understand that no risk is, first of all, not desirable. You actually don't want a risk for your life. You want the risks you voluntarily take. And maybe you want high stakes risks you voluntarily take. But even more fundamentally, there is no risk pathway. You're screwed no matter what you do. And that's terrible, but it's also freeing. And so once you know that there's no safety, well, then you can take the most interesting risk. And why not? And then maybe you don't need safety. Okay, so you decided to go on Piers Morgan.
That ties directly into what happened on Piers Morgan.
Okay.
So 15 minutes, and he asked the usual questions you would expect around.
How was he with you?
He was really nice. He was very charismatic, likable, kind, and very.
Well, he's a funny guy.
He is.
He's kind of like Simon Cowell.
He's
in a way, you know. You can see in they both worked on America's Got Talent and Britain's Got Talent. You can see if Cowell likes somebody, he's really on their side. If he doesn't like them, he's really not on their side. And Morgan is like that. And he's also the sort of guy who he'll give you the benefit of the doubt. But if you start playing games, then you're in serious trouble. So he obviously started by giving you the benefit of the doubt. He was probably, reasonably pleased with the video that he had seen and thought, that he would be inviting to begin with. So that worked out well. Okay, so...
And he asked the question, the last question was interesting. It's the one that stands out in my mind. And he goes, and all your hair, because he watched the video, here was producers. Someone went to the YouTube channel in the research and I was, all right, give me something to... They found me talking about archetypes in Harry Potter. That I got from you.
Oh, yes, I see.
And he goes, he thought I was some Harry Potter scholar or something. He goes, so given all your Harry Potter studies, what would the best piece of life advice be? And from all your Harry Potter studies, and I said, voluntarily enter the unknown. Which is what you were just talking about. Like, it might be, the unknown beneath the surface of Hogwarts. It might be facing the serpent that could turn you to stone when you see it, like fear. But you must do so voluntarily in order to save Ginny. And it's the voluntary aspect of that is, which is just classic. Everyone echoes that. They're like, okay.
Yeah, well, it's a very good thing to know.
But it's true.
Yeah, well, it's also
true.
It's also surprising because it belies the merely objective sense of the real. A situation is the same no matter how you encounter it. That's an objectivist perspective. A situation is radically different depending on how you encounter it. Kicking and screaming is very different than voluntarily, even if the stressor is the same. And there doesn't seem to be any particular limit to that, which is why, of course, all the heroic quest archetypal narratives are voluntary confrontation with truly terrible things. Otherwise, the quest has no real deep significance. Okay, so the Piers Morgan interview, that went well. That was a success. Yeah. And what was the consequence of that?
The next day, I go back into school. They call me back into the principal's office and they say, dude, you went on Piers Morgan? Like, can you at least check in with us before you do Piers Morgan? Those are the exact words that was presented.
Right.
Can you at least check with us?
Yeah, but
what you just articulated was masterful, and that's the best logical read that you could provide on that situation, I think.
All bureaucratic entities will always say no to anything that's quest related.
There's
obviously
no benefit to them.
There's only risk, right? There's only downside. Of course, this is partly why I think research has been almost completely stifled in universities. You cannot do risk-free research. Period. It's not possible. You can't just do the next safe thing. It's too obvious, first of all, and there's no excitement in the discovery. It has to be a risk, and the risk has to be real. And, we don't want to be too cynical about this either. It's not obviously the role of bureaucracies to take risks, right? It's the role of bureaucracies to set policies and strategies and to abide by the rules and move forward. Well, you see that in Harry Potter too, because there's a weird dynamic constantly in the Harry Potter stories that Rowling she was great at this, because Harry's band, they're academically oriented and they're upward striving, but they're always rule breakers, right? And the grand wizard at the top of the ladder, he put all the rules that govern the educational institution in place and knows what they are, but is perfectly happy that Harry and his, band of ethical miscreants break rules.
Yeah, and he knows about it almost. They insinuate that he knows what they're doing the entire time.
Exactly, lets it go anyways. Yeah, well, that's that constant paradox. It's really the paradox of something like liberal versus conservative. The conservatives, fundamentally, I hate to call the conservatives the bureaucrats, because in our weird political world, things have all got flipped around. But generally speaking, the conservative types are much more rule-oriented and much less entrepreneurial. And so, but there's a dance between those two that's absolutely necessary. And there's no getting rid of the conflict, because most of the time you should follow the rules, but some of the time you definitely shouldn't.